Welcome to Listening to Lawyers, a special project of the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program at the State Bar of Wisconsin. Listening to Lawyers provides the Wisconsin legal community opportunities to hear personal stories from Wisconsin's lawyers about adversity, perseverance, resilience, transformation, and hope. Hello, I'm Amber Ault, your host for this episode of Listening to Lawyers, a project of the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program of the State Bar of Wisconsin, and I'm glad you're joining us. The goal of Listening to Lawyers is to elevate examples of complex and difficult situations lawyers have faced and how they have navigated them. Today's guest, attorney Lindsay Draper, has been a leader in what might be called the lawyer wellness movement and was the initial vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion of the Institute for Lawyer Wellbeing, or IWIL. Currently, he serves as chair of the ABA Standing Committee on Public Protection and the Provision of Legal Services. Lindsay is a graduate of Marquette University Law School, a retired Milwaukee County Court Commissioner, and an active member of the Wisconsin State Bar's Senior Lawyers Division. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
I'm so glad to talk to you. You and I have worked together briefly a couple of times, but we've never had a chance to have a deeper conversation about you personally. And I see this episode of Listening to Lawyers as that opportunity.
Thank you. This has been an exciting period for me. As you may know, this upcoming year will be the 50th anniversary of my graduation from Marquette Law School and admission to the bar. So there have been a whole bunch of things that, because I have been a Wisconsin lawyer, I've had the opportunity to participate in.
You've had a remarkable career with so many achievements on so many fronts, benefiting other human beings. And although we've only worked together briefly, I've been touched by how much heart you bring to interactions with folks. And so I'm wondering, a person doesn't tick off so many boxes and make change in so many ways without having some fire in the belly and vision. And I'm wondering if you can tell me what's the heart of that for you. So it might be before law school. What is it that drove you to become a lawyer and then continue that momentum in your lawyering career?
Amber, you've given me three questions right there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the legal profession. It's been an honor to be a Wisconsin lawyer. It has given me so many opportunities to do a number of things. It's also, and some of those have involved overcoming issues in my own life. But one of the things about being a lawyer is that we get the opportunity to help others who have fallen from grace, to help them get back up or put things in proper perspective. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is the fact that because we are a self-regulating profession, we get the chance to help other people who have trusted us. And that sometimes means we have to look at our own behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I often think about at this stage in my career, probably the thing that I do the most frequently, is work with training teachers in how to make the study of the Constitution and U.S. history interesting to high needs students. The reason I point that out, my parents were both college level instructors.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up around university campuses and frankly wanted to be a teacher. One of the more memorable comments that my mother made to me, and she was pushing me to do something other than be a teacher, was, "You can make history, then you teach it." And so one of the things that's been really important in working in law is to try and do some things that are very much akin to what my parents tried to instill in their children.
Hmm.
That you didn't do it by yourself, you had help, you owe it to others.
So, can you be more specific about the history that your mother envisioned you making?
My parents were both Alabama natives. My mother was the daughter of a coal miner in Dora, Alabama. My father was the son of a farmer in Clanton, Alabama. Neither one of them had money to go to college, although they both showed up at Alabama State College in Montgomery. And you can tell how different the times were, but individually, they both went to the president and showed them their records and said, I want to go to school. And he gave them both jobs. My mother worked in the library and my father worked in the dining hall. The reason I talk about that is I will never forget the day when I came home and there was a college student in our house ironing clothes. And I, of course, am going, okay, who are you? And the short version of this is my parents hired somebody who was a student who had no money. So many of the young people who went to Alabama State back then, their parents gave everything to get them and pay for them to go to college, had nothing for allowance or anything like that. My parents were teachers trying hard to help. And the way they could help was hire them do some stuff around the house. And because you couldn't, as a teacher, give money to a student, but you could hire them to do something. So I think growing up in Montgomery um, during, and I mentioned in an earlier conversation that you and I had, my dad drove people to work during the bus boycott. And one of the Monday through Friday arguments at our house was my dad insisting that he needed to go do this for his children's future. And my mother's question, and who's going to help me raise these babies when they kill you? That you had this struggle going on as to both parents thinking they were doing what was right for their children. So I got the chance to see that um, and to kind of experience a great deal of what the struggle was for people doing for others.
Say more.
Well, going to college was not an option that everybody had. And one of the things that I think I took from the comments that my mom made when she was suggesting that I could do some more than just teach. She respected teaching. It was what allowed them to build their family
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
life that we had. But what she saw and what Dad talked about was that there were opportunities available to me that had not been available to them, and that it was important to take advantage of that. I left the South and went to Seattle University for undergrad. And just like Marquette is a Jesuit institution, so is Seattle University. And it was partially in that realm that I ended up in Milwaukee at Marquette. I will always be grateful to, I think Dean Charles Mitkowski was the person who was primarily responsible for having me come here. Milwaukee and Marquette have provided me tremendous opportunity to participate in law in this field and to build a career that, like I mentioned, as of next year will be half a century.
So what did you study in undergrad when you went to Seattle?
I was a history major in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the really cool things about what I've been allowed to do here in Milwaukee, I'm also on the board of directors of the Milwaukee County Historical Society, that I've been able to tie interests that I have had throughout my life, including, that experience in Montgomery, the life that I was, frankly participating in as I grew up. Around me were some of the demonstrations. I do remember my dad was part of the Selma to Montgomery March, for instance, and he drove people to work during the Montgomery bus boycott. So getting the chance to work and now learn more about Milwaukee history and telling that story is a huge part of who I am.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Embracing their role as a trusted partner in the legal community, WisLAP prioritizes providing reliable liability insurance solutions to safeguard lawyers and law firms. This commitment is underpinned by a profound dedication to the Wisconsin legal community, evident in WisLAP's unwavering support and active engagement over the years.
Hi, Russell Nicolay here with Nicolay Law, Accident and Injury Lawyers. If you have clients that have been injured, my office would love the opportunity to help them get compensated and get their life back on track. We handle referrals and co-counsel relationships on injury cases all across Wisconsin.
And now back to our interview. And so you were a history student. When did the turn toward law happen? When you went to Seattle, was it, by that point, had you decided law is what I want to do?
There was a slow movement because I really did want to be a history teacher. One of the things that my parents said to me, and I know how this is going to sound, but one of the conversations we had when I told them that I was going to take a history job after graduation was they were both teachers, but they were also a bit disappointed that I didn't look beyond the safety of what I had grown up with. And so that, I think, was one of the motivators that said, you can do something else. And law was the profession that seemed to offer that opportunity.
Were there lawyers that you admired or people wielding the law as you were growing up? Lawyers that your parents admired or lawyers that you admired? Like I'll just say growing up, I didn't know about lawyers. So I'm wondering about you.
Well, I knew teachers.
Yeah.
Because my parents taught at Alabama State
Mm-hmm.
and then Tennessee State. But Fred Gray was an attorney in Montgomery who championed a great deal of the cause. One of the really neat things about growing up on the Alabama State campus, I lived next door to one of the leaders of the Montgomery bus boycott.
Mm-hmm.
That I saw people making changes through school. One of the things that I also got the chance to see and recall that a lot of what was happening as the time that I was in high school, starting to pay attention to more than just my neighborhood, Thurgood Marshall was leading a lot in ways that people didn't normally think of. The law prior to soldiers coming home from World War II was not primarily the way that African Americans addressed the issues that were daily in their lives. I got the chance to see and admire people who did things, and the law was one of the ways that they accomplished them.
Mm-hmm. So do you recall a moment where you said, I'm going to apply to law school?
Over time, I thought about law. To be real honest with you, I remember waking up the day that I took the LSAT and debating whether to go, and remembered I had paid for it. And that was back at a time when I was in college and didn't have all that much money and said, you can't waste this. And I went that day. I waffled, I guess, would be the reason I told that story.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that this was an approach, recalled that I had kind of wanted to be a history teacher. So the part of me that was still 20 years old struggled with, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this because I know it's what my parents want me to do. I mean, that it was much later that I came to understand how incredibly grateful I need to be to my parents for pushing me to go into law.
Hmm. Hmm. Lindsay, were you the oldest of the children?
I was the youngest. And I think if anybody who knows me could tell that I had, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
The best way, and I will sort of tell you that part of what um, I think was a motivator. I have a sister who is 21 months older than I am, but who also graduated from college the same month that I graduated from high school. So if you think through what that meant, I had some people who were older than me who set some fairly high standards.
Yeah. Had she also left home, or was she in Alabama?
Well, by that time we were living in Nashville.
Oh.
The early part of my life was
Hmm.
started in Alabama. Um, when I was in the seventh grade, our family moved to Nashville. My parents were at Tennessee State University.
Okay. Thank you. So, when you decided you were going to go to law school, what was your vision of the kind of law that you wanted to practice?
I really wasn't sure. Recalling that my parents had been in education, I wanted to be a history teacher. That I did not know a lot about the law when I started at Marquette. I frankly felt my way through. During the time at Marquette, I had the opportunity to participate in the juvenile law seminar, and that allowed me to spend a summer working as an intern in the district attorney's office at Children's Court in Milwaukee County. And that's where my career ended up, with me working at Children's Court, where I was a prosecutor for about a decade. I worked in the public defender's office for, I believe, around 8 years. And then I was a court commissioner at Children's Court for 13 years.
Hmm.
But I ended up doing something that was deeply ingrained, frankly, starting with the juvenile law seminar.
We're going to take a brief break to hear from one of our sponsors. We'll be back.
Videos and other digital evidence are playing a more important role in today's world. The award-winning engineers and analysts at Paradigm Productions enhance and analyze video and audio evidence and provide expert witness testimony on digital evidence in a wide variety of legal matters. When you need to get to the facts, count on the professionals with a proven track record to bring out the truth in video and audio recordings. Email me, jake@paradigmproductions.com. That's Jake at PARADYME productions.com to discuss your case and what we can do to help.
And now, back to our interview. I've talked to a number of lawyers who, at some point in law school, said, this is not for me. I'm going to go do something else. And then something happens that keeps them in, or somebody says to them, yeah, we're not letting you drop out. Or, or they look at something pragmatic like, well, I've paid the rent on this apartment for spring semester, I better stay. Once you were in law school, was there any kind of crisis about staying with it? Was it the right decision? Like, did you go through that?
I did, just like a number of people. And one of the people that I attribute, frankly, the fact that I ended up being an attorney, Charles Minkowski, was the associate dean who was responsible for me being here. Professor Aiken was one of the people who, in that period when I was questioning whether this was the right decision to make, took the time to help me realize, first off, that law school tended to be a struggle for a lot of people. It wasn't just that I was having the question, is this the right call to make? But, and one of the things that I know that happens by the time you're in law school, the personal and professional sometimes move, but I will always be grateful to several people there at Marquette's Law School, kind of, helped work through that crisis of, have I made the right decision in my life?
Mm-hmm. And do you recall if that happened in 1L or 2L Or do you recall like which year it was that?
First year.
That's what people tell me. Yeah, it's that first year is shocking in some ways.
And recall how different law school is than the rest of the educational period. And people who've done really well all the way through school all of a sudden find themselves struggling. And I shouldn't say people, I should say Lindsay. That, you know, school had not been that difficult. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, good God.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of folks go to law school having been, the big fish in some small ponds or some medium-sized ponds, even some big ponds. And then they get to law school and all the competition is just as good as they are. So the curve looks really different in terms of like how thinly it's sliced. You've got such excellence. And then my impression is there's a culture in law school that breeds competition with your peers, and then that leads to some loneliness and some self-doubt.
One of the things that, as I look back, yes, there was the competition, but there were also friends who were very supportive. And there were people, some of whom I'm, 49 years later, still in contact with and still regard as very good, treasured friends. And there were people, some of whom were professors, who clearly, had to treat students as students and people who needed to learn to be lawyers, but also, provided the opportunity to grow. And, not everybody, if I recall, I was 20 when I started in law school. And, when I think back on that as young child, I mean, there was so much growth still to happen.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to take the turn toward lawyer well-being, lawyer mental health. Right. That's clearly been a passion for you. What's such on that course? Why is that so important to you?
Well, as I look back on it, part of how I got involved in issues regarding lawyer well-being started with my role in the National Client Protection Organization. I was a member of the Wisconsin Lawyers Fund for Client Protection Committee. I worked for a number of years. And one of the things that you eventually learn is that part of what ended up causing lawyers to struggle and have, whether it was theft or whatever, had to do with substance abuse, had to do with mental health challenges, gambling issues. There were things that contributed to our relationships with our clients. If those things go unaddressed, people who devoted careers, who devoted life, destroy those. But they also hurt clients. That part of what we in the legal profession look at is we often see people with incredible ability lose the ability to practice law. But there are also some people who trusted us and came to us and put their lives in our hands. Well, that was one of the things that made me, and my own personal life, lives of friends, I saw people who lost everything because of issues related to what amounted to human weaknesses. And, what you can't allow, or at least you try to fight, is people losing the ability to benefit others as well as themselves, to build really good lives because of things that, frankly, we can do something about. We can help. And one of the things that I often talk about is, frankly, a sign that I saw at Ethan Allen School for Boys. And it was a poster that said, "I do not care that you have fallen, What matters is that you get up. And that always struck me as so important because at times people need a hand to get up. And that's why working on issues like well-being were so important. If, and one of the other things that is important in this conversation is to know that the lawyer well-being movement can't just be reactive. It can't just come into play after an attorney has been suspended, disbarred, whatever has happened. Sometimes we have to provide services to keep that from happening, to keep clients from being hurt, to recognize that, as much as we might want to say that meditation is a peripheral thing, it's an important thing. The time that goes into it is critical because we do have to take care of ourselves in order to do the best for our clients. One of the issues that often gets raised is lawyers asking, especially lawyers who are solo practitioners, for instance, when do you expect me to do all this meditating? Or when do you expect me to tell me which client I should neglect to go do all this self-care that you keep pushing? And part of what we have to do is get lawyers to understand you frankly are a better lawyer if you're a healthy lawyer, but we also want you to be around.
Mm-hmm. So really, by working with client protection issues, it sounds like you began to do like a root cause analysis. Hey, what's driving this difficult behavior? It's not bad lawyers, it's human beings who have stumbled or struggled and find themselves in a difficult situation. And then they're doing the thing that lawyers don't want to do, which is harm their clients.
That's exactly it, is that in looking at the client protection world, how do we prevent that? What can we do that so much of what client protection involves includes keeping lawyers healthy. Lawyers didn't go into the profession with the idea of neglecting or hurting a client. They went into law with the idea of helping. And it's how do we make sure that that is what is going on?
So how would you answer that question at this point, having thought about it for a really long time and have done work around it, set up institutions around it? What are the answers?
Well, there's several things. And because there is no single lawyer, there are various answers to that. First of all, making sure that lawyers, ours is a competitive profession. Ours is one that involves conflict, but also having lawyers recognize that as much as we care for our clients, we have to care for ourselves. And having lawyers recognize that we give advice, it's hard for us to take it. And the health of the lawyer, both physical and mental, is critical. And as bad as we look at the word selfish, sometimes we've got to care about our own health. We've got to care about our own well-being as much as we might want to devote every moment to looking out for clients and our family. And sometimes in that order, we've also got to include ourselves in that.
I absolutely hear you. And of course, working at WisLAP, I agree. The question I'm asking you is, what's the mechanism for convincing lawyers or changing the culture so that, mental health is seen as part of lawyer competence, or self-care is seen as part of lawyer competence? What are the, if you will, what are the carrots and what are the sticks that can shift things?
It's very difficult to talk to a lawyer about what he or she needs to be doing. That's a difficult thing, is that we tend to be very independent. We tend to have the idea of knowing what we need and what we can do. At times, observations have been that lawyers struggle to think about themselves as needing help, as needing rest, because we really do tend to be overachievers. And as a result of that, we tend to take on a lot and not understand that there is but so much that we can do, and that at some time we pay a price. One of the questions that solo practitioners, for instance, in smaller communities, who are the lawyer or one of the 2 or 3 lawyers, really struggle with, how do I find the time to do all this self-care that you want me to do? I've got people who need me, and I've got deadlines I have to meet. One of the things that the lawyer well-being movement tries to communicate is that there is no one who wants you to do less work or less quality work. What we want is for you to care as much about yourself as you do your clients. And we don't want to lose you. We don't want to lose your reputation. We want your family to have the benefit of your presence. And sometimes that involves taking the time, because sometimes we're more effective if we're well rested, that we can devote all the energy to getting an answer. Sometimes if we're well rested or we are healthy, we can see that there were 2 or 3 options instead of the one that came to mind.
So I hear you saying that leveraging lawyers' desire to play full out and to play at the top of their game can be one way of effectively conveying the message. Look, this isn't an add-on, this isn't an option. This is how you bring your best game, is by getting the resources you need, building a team of people to support you, and taking intermittent rest, taking some rest to recover, so that you can get back on the court. Is that what you're saying?
That is part of it. Valuing the lawyer's health as much as valuing the well-being of the client is what the movement is trying to do, is to say, we have to, first of all, recognize that we are human, that we do have vulnerabilities, and we have needs to be cared for. There are super lawyers. There are people who can do great things, and what we want is for them to be able to do those great things as long as possible.
Yeah.
And we don't want to lose lawyers by virtue of them not doing self-care.
Yeah. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back. The Lawyer's Assistance Program at the State Bar of Wisconsin is staffed by licensed mental health professionals offering consultation and support to Wisconsin's lawyers. We provide confidential consultation, recommendations, referral, and short-term interventions on a wide range of challenges lawyers face in their work and personal lives. You can reach us by phone at 1-800-543-2625 or schedule with us through our online scheduling system at wisbar.org/WisLAP. Now back to listening to lawyers. Lindsay, I'm going to ask you, has there been a time in your life or your career where you had to look in the mirror and say, whoa, I am hurting myself here. I'm not taking good care of myself. I'm risking depriving my family of Lindsay if I don't make a change.
Absolutely. And there were times when I was forced to do that. one of the reasons that I don't drink now is because it became important to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to ask me in a private moment, I would tell you that I think I'm here now because I did stop.
Mm-hmm.
That there are decisions that we all have to make about our well-being. Sometimes we get forced to make them. Sometimes we get asked to make them, that say you are a better version of you if you take better care. And that's one of the things that I get to look back on and say, fortunately, there were people who said, you are too valuable for us to not fight you, that it is important that we not lose you.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like that message landed. And may I ask, at the moment where you needed to stop drinking, what allowed you to make that shift into sobriety? Was it, changing support systems? Was it AA? Was it faith?
There were a number of things. I was a single parent, and the price of the cost to my career, the cost to being able to raise my son, the damage that would be irreparable. And then having a couple of people, I don't want to do too much here in terms of other people's involvement, but having a friend crying, telling me that she thought I was too valuable to lose, and she was sure she was about to lose me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some things that just make you make the right call.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Because we know it's an issue in Wisconsin, but it's particularly an issue for lawyers. Alcohol use as a means of coping with stress or despair is, very common in the legal profession. So thank you for sharing that moment. And I'm really glad that person delivered the message in a way that it sounds like it was not judgmental. It was about her fear that we might have to go on without you. And that sounds like that was a very powerful way to deliver that message.
There were a number of things that occurred, but sometimes when you know that people who care about you have said, we're going to lose you, and I don't want that to happen, that's not something you can let go of.
Yeah. So in some ways, it's taking the step because of your impact on others. The psychotherapist in me is paying attention to. It's not so much about me caring about myself. It's me caring about the impact of what I'm doing on you, on the dear friend, on the son, so it's like I've got a motivation that is an act of caring. So for the benefit of others, it will benefit me clearly, but there's a way in which it sounds like tapping into your care for others helped to make that shift for you.
One of the things that I would try and convey is that however difficult decisions are, what the other side could be ought to provide a great deal of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes important to realize that however proud, happy, satisfied we are, it could get better. And if we're able to make the difficult calls and help others make those difficult calls, things can be a whole lot better.
Mm-hmm. Seems like that's what lawyers do.
I think that's what drives a whole bunch of us to go into the profession.
Yeah. Okay. So, Lindsay, I'm going to wrap up with you here in a minute, but I want to ask you, 50 years in to this career, What's the best thing about being an attorney for you?
It's not uncommon to run into former clients or to get, and I think one of the proudest moments was when a former client asked me to be at his wedding because to him, I represented father, and the woman who ran the group home where he had been placed represented mother. The two of us were the people at his wedding who had known him the longest. His parents were no longer part of the picture. I think that is an example of knowing the impact that lawyers can have, but also personally knowing that he saw the effort of working with him, not just as what I did to make money for a living, but also because he felt that I cared.
It's a beautiful story. Thank you, Lindsay. Attorney Lindsay Draper, thank you for joining us on Listening to Lawyers.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us for Listening to Lawyers, a special project of the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program, also known as WisLAP, at the State Bar of Wisconsin. Please let us know what you think of this program by sharing your comments on our State Bar of Wisconsin WisLAP website. If you are a Wisconsin lawyer and you're going through something and would like confidential professional mental health and wellness consultation or support, please call our confidential phone line at 1-800-543-2625. That's 1-800-543-2625, or schedule a consultation with us through our website. And that is at www.wisbar.org/WisLAP. The opinions and points of view expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent endorsement by the State Bar of Wisconsin. Nothing in this interview should be construed as formal, legal, mental health, or medical advice.
Listening to Lawyers is a production of the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program at the State Bar of Wisconsin. Recorded and mixed at Paradigm Productions.